Hey threadheads, fly tyers, and feather binders, welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. Today we're going to be tying a simple version of a steelhead hammer. There's two different versions of this fly. There's the simplified version as well as the quote-unquote Orvis version, which features a woven body and shell back. This is a much simpler pattern to tie, so if you're going to be losing a lot of flies, might want to stick with this one. It's basically could be considered a nymph pattern or an egg pattern or egg sucking nymph, whatever you want to consider it. Anyhow, this is one that I tie in about 5 or 6 different colors. I've got hot pink, orange, shrimp pink, purple, chartreuse, white, yellow, red. This is long. Get a fresh hook in the vise. I'm using an egg hook. This is the Mustad C67S in the size 8, and I have a 4mm tungsten bead. We're just going to add a little bit of extra weight on this fly. Just got a little bit of lead. This is 0.02 lead. Just add a couple wraps in behind the bead. Just want to make sure that's snug in there. That'll help get this fly down in faster water a little bit faster. If you don't need the fly to be as fast, you can use a brass bead head. It'll still sink fairly quickly, but it's better for a bit slower water. So we just tied the thread on behind the bead. We're just going to wrap down the hook a little bit here. I'm using a hot pink Danville 70 denier 6/0 flat waxed. And I'm just going to add a few extra thread wraps here behind this here lead wire, just to help prevent a big bump in the body of this fly. Alright, first we're going to use a bit of Schlappen here. I'm just going to take a few fibers. You can use hackle as well if you don't have any Schlappen, or hen works fairly well. So just grasp those by the tips and pull them off, and we'll gather the hackle fibers by the butt. I'm just going to measure those down along the hook shank to a good spot, and then we'll tie that in. Trim off these butt ends. I'm also going to tie in a section of silver holographic wire, or tinsel, mylar tinsel, not wire. And I'm just going to tie that along the near side of the fly as well. And that's about a good size for a tail. I'm going to wind the thread back up just behind the bead. And next I'm going to tie in a couple pieces of this super stretch floss. You can see it's very stretchy material. I'm going to take 2 strands of this in black. You can use 2 strands or 1 strand. I like to use 2. Gives me a little smoother coverage on the fly. So I just tied those in behind the bead. Try that again. Just tied those in behind the bead. And I'm just going to give them a little bit of tension, stretch them out a little bit as I wind down, and then I'll wind back up to behind the bead. Give myself a bit of thread there, and we'll just want to wind those up together. I just put a little bit of tension in this super stretch floss as I wind it up back to the eye. You want to leave yourself a little bit of room to tie in the crystal chenille or Estaz, whichever you're using. So you want to make sure that you keep pressure on your thread so that this super stretch floss doesn't unravel. I also put a couple extra wraps after I fold it over just to make sure that it's locked in place. Alright, next we're going to take the silver mylar tinsel. We're just going to wrap that in open wraps as a rib. This helps present a little bit of segmentation on the fly. So we'll just wrap that. Make sure you lock it in place. And lastly, we're going to add a little bit of hot pink crystal chenille. This is a medium. You can also use Estaz. Use the petite size. Probably fits this the best. So I stripped a few fibers off the core of this just to be able to tie it in properly. I'm going to take about 2 to 3 wraps of this material, and I pull this back as I wrap it just so that I'm not trapping a lot of the crystal material underneath each wrap. That looks pretty good. Fold that back so that it's locked in place. Trim it up. Add a whip finish to this fly, and then we're good to go. I'm just going to add a whip finish right behind the bead. I'm going to add a second just for my insurance. A little extra durability. There you have it. Steelhead hammer, the simplified version at least. If you're interested in seeing the other versions of this fly, you can check out the live stream I did earlier. I'll link it in the description.